Hello and welcome to the LSCDS Coffee Break Spotlight. My name is Marie from the LSCDS and I'm here with one of our alumni, Nicole Arguelles. She is a business intelligence partner at GSK and is also currently finishing up her PhD in pharmacology. Prior to starting her role at GSK, she's taken on a few leadership roles as VP of Academics in the Pharmacology Graduate Students Association and was also the co-team lead in the Career Seminar Series at LSCDS. She also worked at a startup company as a business development intern. So thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. And like I already mentioned, you're a business intelligence partner at GSK. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your current professional role?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the really nice introduction. Like what you said, my name is Nicole. I'm a business intelligence partner at GSK. So my therapeutic area of focus is respiratory, where I'm responsible for forecasting, strategic insight, and sales reporting for all the respiratory products of GSK. So I guess a little bit more of what I do as a business intelligence. I guess like an easy and better analog is that I would say business intelligence is comparable to like an internal consultant of a company. So I work a lot with cross-functional team in my therapeutic area. So for instance, like commercial team or market access would reach out to me with the problems that they're working with or hypotheses that they're thinking of. And based on the data analysis that I do, I provide evidence to either support or counteract their hypotheses. So I guess like my role is very data driven and we act as advisor for the cross-functional team, and each therapeutic area at GSK has their own business intelligence, and like what I said, my therapeutic area is respiratory.
Cool, thank you. So have you decided on a career path, or if you have decided on your career path, were there some pivotal moments or events at as a trainee that led you to your career path?
Yeah, for sure. I guess like I I wouldn't say there's like a pivotal moment per se. I think I was more intentional and thoughtful on the events that I went to. So, for instance, for my first year of PhD, like I didn't join a lot of events or didn't do a lot of extracurricular activities just because I knew I needed time to get comfortable in the lab and like manage my day to day. And if I go to events just for the sake of going, I know I wouldn't be able to get something out of it, or wouldn't be present or in the moment during those events. So I really started doing extracurricular activities during my second year, where I joined the career seminar at LSCDS. And that's really like me getting myself to go to these events, because I know for myself that like I'm the type who like makes excuses, for instance. So like we have like preconceived notions that like, oh, I'm not good at writing, so I'm not going to go to scientific communication because I know that's not for me. But me joining in that like the career seminar, I'm like I force myself to join those events. So even if I think I'm not going to be interested, I'm still there because I have to. And I learned a lot of things, and that's essentially how I decided on like what career I'm interested in. I made a list of like what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at, and then that essentially allowed me to figure out what I'm interested in. And then I realized through the career seminars that I'm really interested in combining business and science. So in my third and fourth year, I wanted to test the waters, right? Because like you hear different people like talk about their career path and how they ended up there, but then you don't really know until you try it. So then that's where I did a lot of like my third and fourth year. That's where I did a lot of like consulting events and case studies, and started networking specifically on events or networking on those people with careers in business development or consulting or even market access. And then on my fifth year, that's when I wanted to be a little bit more competitive. So essentially what I did is that I went through U of T website of like different startup companies, both U of T and Mars. And I essentially just looked up different startup companies, looked at which one I'm interested in. I just message all the CEOs on either LinkedIn or just email them if their email's available. And I would just write up like a paragraph or two of like why I'm interested and why they should hire me. And that's how I landed my internship. Like the internship role that I had with a startup company, they weren't even looking for interns, but you just have to think that like interns, because I mean startup, because they're just starting, they require a lot of people to help them manage, so they would take like volunteer or pro bono activities for if you're interested in that. So I started as like a pro bono intern where I'm not necessarily getting paid, but then I learned a lot through it. And then that gave me a leverage to apply for bigger firms, either in consulting or like pharma companies. And that's how I landed at my. So I, before going on my full time, I did an internship at GSK as a business intelligence associate for about 6 months, and then I landed. They offered me a full time position, and that's why I'm in the process of like finishing my PhD while
Right.
working full time.
Great. Yeah, it seems like you really tried to keep your options open, and then the opportunity kind of came to you, and then you went and dove pretty deep and got those opportunities that are leading you where you want to be. That's really great.
Thanks.
Um, what kind of advice would you give yourself in the past, looking back on your grad school experience, if you're considering a transition to industry like you're doing?
Yeah, so I think my advice would be to focus on the translational skills that you'll learn throughout your PhD. And I'm going to be completely candid with you, where I've struggled throughout my PhD, and where I didn't even know if I should finish it or if it's even worth it, because I didn't see the end goal, because I was just focusing. I was like, I had a tunnel vision that like, are these things that I'm learning in my PhD even relevant to where I want to land in industry, right? And then that gave me like a tunnel vision. But like in hindsight now, working at a pharma company, I've learned that in hindsight, I wouldn't be capable of going through certain things without my PhD, because realistically, what PhD will teach you, or at least have taught me, is the mental grit, the resiliency, like the hardworking, being able to adapt to different situations and scenarios. And that's essentially what I value the most in my PhD. And yeah, I am grateful. And I haven't really said this a lot, but I am grateful for going through that process and seeing through it essentially.
Yeah, that's great. What does a typical work day or work week look like for you at GSK?
So it really depends. So there are times where we have like our busy period. So during our forecasting period, so our forecasting period is typically like 2 months of intense work, where we're not accepting any ad hoc requests from our other cross-functional team, where we're just focusing on forecasting and trying to understand how the products will and the market based on the competitors and our assumptions that we put in our model. Essentially modeling like how they would look like and projecting the demand from future years. But aside from forecasting period, we typically get ad hoc requests from our cross-functional team. And this is where really we work with our cross-functional team to understand their questions and to help the business make decisions based on the data, because we are essentially, I guess you can say, data analyst of the company. So essentially a lot of those will come in my mail, and then I would just meet with them, try to understand what the problem is, and goal set, build hypothesis, and then do analysis, and then deliver through presentations or Excel files, or depending on like what they need. But essentially that's my day to day.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Have you encountered any challenges in your transition from graduate school to being in an industry setting? Um, yeah, what's it like being in one environment and then being in another?
Yeah, I think For me, at least, well, in my PhD, I was very hands-on in experiments and like working with animal models. And this, as like a business intelligence, it's very Excel based. And I thought I was decent in Excel, and then joining like my team, I realized that there was still so many things to learn in Excel that I didn't even know exist. So there was just a lot of heavy Excel work that was like a steep learning curve. And because I didn't really know much about forecasting, that was also like a steep learning curve that I had to learn throughout the process. And during like my training, like I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I understand it. And then in the process of actually doing it, I'm like, oh no, this is actually much more difficult than I anticipated. But then actually you just have to work through it logically. Like at the end of the day, it's numbers. Numbers are numbers, and as long as you work through it logically, you'll get to where it is essentially. And a lot of it is just being able to explain what it means to other people. So that's essentially what is translational to like a PhD to where I'm working right now, being able to explain and logically explain it to people and handhold people throughout the data. And I think that's like one of the important skills that I've learned in my PhD that is transferable in my role right now.
Great, thank you. So many networking and professional development opportunities for students have pivoted partially or totally online due to the pandemic. Do you have any practical advice for current trainees on how to make the most of virtual events and how to stand out or leave an impression in a Zoom room?
Yeah, that's hard. Like I did all my networking skills or like networking in person, and to be honest, I'm still in adjusting the online world, and it took
Right.
me a while to be comfortable. And I think just ask questions. I feel like that's where you'll stand out. And to be honest, like I'm going to be quite frank, in my interview process, the person who interviewed me said that the reason why I got hired is because of the questions that I ask. So I think it's really important to ask questions because that's how people gauge your interest level and how thoughtful you are, and that's how you can stand out.
Cool. And do you have any tips for people that are, or trainees that are considering transitioning to industry, tips for networking? Like what are the steps that you took to find people to talk to, and what kind of questions would you ask them?
I think I think the number one advice is that you shouldn't be it's okay if they didn't reply to you. Like you shouldn't take that personally. I have sent thousands of emails where I didn't get a response, and that's fine, and that shouldn't discourage you in continuously doing it because at one point someone will respond, and that is a network and that is a connection. And I feel like that person that will connect means that they're interested in helping you. So take advantage of that, leverage that. Also be prepared on, I know it's like very cheesy, but like have your elevator pitch, like have your tell me about yourself handy and like why you're interested in that role. I feel like those are like the main questions that you would have in like interviews and that you should just always have handy. And then the questions that I would ask is honestly, feel free to ask any questions. I feel like a lot of people like talking about themselves. So then ask questions, be open with your questions and be free about your questions, but obviously just think that it is still a professional environment, so just be careful of the way that you word things. But whatever your interest is, ask. Like if you prioritize your work life balance, ask the hours. If you're prioritized the work environment, ask the culture. It really depends on like what you prioritize in a career. For me, I've learned that I value work life environment or work environment the most. So when I was going to that networking, I made sure to ask like culture about the company because I value that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those are really good tips. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much, Nicole. This was really great. I hope that this can help someone that's interested in transitioning into industry. So thanks again from me and everybody at LSCDS.
No problem. And if you want, if anyone is listening or is watching this, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Great. Thanks, Nicole.
No problem.